This is ILM Circle, a learning workshop presented by the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona, or ISBA. ILM stands for Intentional Learning for Mutual Respect, the foundation of what ISBA is all about.
I welcome everybody tonight. My name is Michelle Marion. I am one of the volunteers with the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona. And I have been moderating these sessions off and on since we had to move to Zoom a number of years ago. So I welcome you all tonight and thank you sincerely for coming. The ILM circles are something that the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona does monthly. And so I'm going to put and share with you in the chat the link to the calendar of past events that we've had for the ILM circles. And then that will also be the space, if you're interested, for next month's session that we'll be looking forward to. I am very, very pleased to be with you all tonight and welcoming Rabbi Debbie Steele to our session. The topic is lessons we can all take from the Jewish Mussar movement, which Mussar stands for ethical mindfulness and ethical values. So many of you already know Rabbi Steele, but I'm going to introduce her a little more formally for those who might not. So Rabbi Steele is the Associate Rabbi of the Temple Soleil in Paradise Valley. Previously, in her 31 years as a rabbi, she served congregations in Topeka, Kansas, and Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska. Among her various roles in community organizations, she was the president of the Midwest Association of Reform Rabbis for 2 years and co-chair of the Kansas State Holocaust Commission for 5 years. She currently sits on the Theological Dialogue Commission of Arizona, Faith Network, and Rabbi Steele is an alum of the Institute for Jewish Spirituality's clergy program and considers spirituality an important part of her rabbinate. In 2019, she received her honorary doctorate of divinity from Hebrew Union College, serving as a rabbi for 25 years. Rabbi Steele earned her bachelor's degree, graduating magna cum laude from Rice University. She is married to Steve Steele, who has a private therapy practice here in Phoenix. And she is the proud mother to Micah and Jonah Steele, mother-in-law to Madison Steele, and grandmother to Ellie Steele. So I am very, very pleased to welcome Rabbi Steele tonight. If you would like to put questions in the chat throughout her presentation, that is perfectly fine. I'll be moderating that. Or if you'd just like to raise your hand, we can stop and kind of clarify anything as we go through the presentation. And then, of course, we'll have time at the end for more formal and a more lengthy question and answer time. So welcome, Rabbi Steele.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for introducing me. And thank you, Joe, for helping us out with the Zoom and technical issues. So it looks like we've got Joan, Peggy, and Sharon, all of whom I know from Temple Soleil. So don't need to ask. We were going to do a quick religion survey to find out kind of what faiths we have in the room, but I know. So we won't do that. And it is being recorded, so other people who want to see this in the future can. But again, I just want to say we can do things informally. If you have a question, please don't hesitate to stop me as we go along. So what I'd like to do is I want to start out just saying a little bit about what Mussar is and how it came about. And then we'll take a look, we'll dive into a specific example of Mussar practice. So that's my plan. So as Michelle said, Mussar means instruction in Hebrew, and it is a virtue-based ethical instruction protocol, we might say, that developed over a long period of time. It is a path of contemplative practices and exercises that help an individual to break through barriers that they might want to, the rabbis say that these things that obstruct the flow of inner light in our lives, so that help us to be our fullest, best self. The other word that's really important to know, so Mussar, instruction, it's kind of the overarching name for this kind of school of thought. And the other word to know is midah, and that's a word I'll be referring to a lot. And then the plural is midot. A midah in Hebrew is a quantity. So, for example, you might say, what's the quantity or what's the midah of mercy that you have? How much mercy or how much patience do you have, right? But it's come to be that instead of it meaning in this program quantity, it came to mean the character trait itself. So you'd say the midah of patience, the midah of faith. So it's come to mean the character trait of whatever it is. So 2 words to know, Mussar and midah. Midah meaning the character trait itself. All right. So here's a little bit of background about this program. About 1,000 years ago, certain rabbis were trying to understand, why is it so hard to be good, right? If we have the commandments, why is it hard sometimes to follow those commandments? Or another way to look at it is, maybe we have specific commandments, but there are also overarching commandments in the Bible and in all of our faith traditions that teach us to try to be a good person. So, for example, the Bible says, Sor Mirah, turn from evil. Well, how do I do that? How do I get myself to turn from evil? We also have in Leviticus, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. And it gives us some specific things to do. But beyond that, how do I create a life that feels like I'm living up to a holy standard? And in Genesis, we have God telling Abraham, you're going to be a blessing. Okay, well, how do I be a blessing? How do I change myself in such a way that I become more and more this person that I want to be? So as I said, starting about 1,000 years ago, particularly 2 rabbis, Bachya ibn Pekuda and Sadia HaGaon, these are 2 big, important rabbis, started to write about character development. How do you develop into the person you want to be? And Bachya ibn Pekuda in Spain 1,000 years ago wrote a book called Chovot V'Levavot, which translates into duties of the heart. So it's how do you get the heart to go the way you want it to be? And I'm going to tell you more about what he and others said. But first, after this happened about 1,000 years ago, it then developed into like a series of writings about Mussar, about ethical development. How do you make this happen to yourself? And mostly these were writings that were studied individually. Maybe a teacher taught you some of them, but they didn't really catch on very widely until the 19th century. In the 19th century in Lithuania, Rabbi Israel Salanter took these Mussar texts that had developed over, 900 years or so, and he developed the idea of like a group-based Mussar study to strengthen the Jewish community. What if your whole, group that was following a certain rabbi studied Mussar texts together and tried to get each other to improve themselves? And what if you had certain little exercises you could do to help yourself? And he really developed it into much more of a practice among Eastern European Jews. What's interesting is that during that time in Lithuania, in Eastern Europe, Jews had very little power. They really couldn't go out and change the government, change the world. But what they could do is change their inner life, right? Change who they were, try to improve who they were. So it really became a popular movement in that time, in the 1900s, 1800s, 1900s, to work on oneself. Then I would say in the last 30 to 40 years, Mussar really made the jump from Orthodox Judaism to Reform, Conservative, Reconstructionist Judaism, really to Judaism at large, where many more Jews are studying about Mussar, and I think non-Jews are finding it interesting too. There are now books written about Mussar, so you can get a book that can help you on this road. And there's the Mussar Institute, for example. You can take classes from them, and they teach you this practice. So if this interests you, there's definitely an opportunity to learn more and do more. But that's a little bit of the history. And now I want to teach you a little bit about the practice. But before I do, any questions so far? Okay, I'm going to jump in then. So the midot, these ethical qualities, the rabbis came up with lists of these qualities, and there's several different lists. And in addition to that, you really could write your own list of traits that you want to work on, right? I mean, you could come up with anything, really. There's no reason you couldn't. But I did want to show you the one list. And like I said, this is not the only one, but just so you get a sense of kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about these traits. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this. So here is one list of midot. So one midah, one quality or character trait we might want to work on is humility. Another's patience, gratitude, compassion, order, equanimity, honor, simplicity, enthusiasm, silence, generosity, truth, moderation, loving kindness, responsibility, trust, faith. Yirah is like kind of a sense of awe about God or in the world. So we're going to talk more about what one does with these, but I just want you to have a sense what some of these are. And if you are interested in a good place to start on this beyond what I speak about today, I love this book. So I wanted to share it. And that's where this list comes from. This is called Everyday Holiness by Alan Marinus. And he's a really interesting guy. He's not a rabbi. He's just somebody who started to learn from a teacher about Mussar practice and loved it and felt like it really changed his life. And he's written this book and others. I think he now has a PhD in this topic. But anyway, I think this is a great book to start with for anyone. I don't think you have to be Jewish to appreciate it because really, I mean, aren't these traits that pretty much anybody would love to work on, right? You know, truth, responsibility, trust, faith. These are good overall traits for us in life. Okay, so all right, so what does one do with these? Let me go back to my notes here. I wanted to share with you guys. So I'll be able to see you guys at the same time. All right, so the Mussar school of thought teaches that we all have all the midot. Everybody has all of these. We have trust, we have responsibility, we have order, we have faith. Those exist within each person. But the quantity, how much we have, differs person to person and also often differs in circumstances, right? Different circumstances. We might have circumstances where we are patient, for example, and other circumstances where, boy, that's just a tough place for us to have patience, right? Just to take one example. We might argue that, you know, that you just can never have too much of a midah, but that isn't actually the way that this school of thought thinks. It would say that for most midot, we exist on a continuum of it, and we're looking for the right balance, right? You can have too little of a quality, you can have too much of a quality. Even something like patience, you can have too much patience. That maybe you never get anything, you know, you never push forward because I'm just going to wait, you know. So for most qualities, it's about thinking, where am I on that continuum? Where do I want to be? And so it's about being very reflective, very mindful of who we are. At the same time, and I think this is something that this is a place where modern, maybe more of a psychological perspective has helped the Mussar program, is at the same time to say, be gentle with yourself. Like this could become harsh, right? If you are analyzing yourself and judging every time, that you're working on a character trait, that can get to be a bit much. So it's about understanding that we improve in small steps. And perhaps my very favorite thing about the Mussar program is the teaching that life is a curriculum. I love that perspective. We're all always meant to be growing. So, if we have that perspective, then it's not, ooh, I failed. It's, oh, here's a chance to grow. And so I just think that's a really healthy, good perspective. And I love it. In a little bit, we might look at the midah of patience. And one of my teachers said, when you're in traffic, you can be so frustrated by traffic and you can get angry, or you could go, wow, this is a great opportunity to practice patience, right? Like, isn't that nice, reframing, like, oh, I have this opportunity to work on this midah that I want to work on. So, so that's one thing I wanted to share with you. The Mussar school of thought, the way this program works, is to take one midah at a time. Maybe you take the midah for 2 weeks. Maybe you're going to do different ones 2 weeks at a time. Maybe you take the midah for a month, but it's just one. And the idea is to kind of hone in one's focus on the one midah at a time. And I think it's with the idea that hopefully when you move on to the next one, this one's had an impact. And, it's easy then to go back to and to remember it, even when you've moved on to the next one, because this other one is kind of ingrained in you now, what you want to work on with it. We've got a new person. Hi, Carrie. Glad to have you with us. And another one, Miriam. Wonderful. Great. Glad to have you both with us, all of you. All right, so I'm just talking a little bit about midot work within this Jewish teaching about working on our character traits. So we're going to use mindfulness, we're going to use introspection. Another part of it, which I was wondering how translatable this is to Christianity or Islam or Buddhism, but because Mussar developed as a Jewish practice, part of it is to study Jewish texts that are related to the character trait and learn from it. And I love that because sometimes we think of a character trait in a certain way, and our religious traditions may understand the character trait a little differently. And so that's really generative, I think. It's really fertile ground for us for learning, for just being able to tweak a little bit how we understand a character trait. And I'm going to give you some examples, or at least one, in a little bit. So if you're not Jewish, you could still use this. I talked about this book, Everyday Holiness. That's a Mussar text that has different midot to work on. But you also could go to, to a clergy person of your faith and ask, are there character trait books, that work from a Christian perspective, an Islamic, a Hindu, I think that might be interesting to kind of figure out. Thank you, Michelle. She put the Amazon link to Everyday Holiness in the chat. Okay, so let's say that I've decided that I really want to pick on the midah of, well, first off, let me say it can be really good to do this in a group. So I'm just saying it like I'm working on it one person. But if you get 10 people together and we're going to meet once a month and we're going to study about a new midah, and then we're going to come back in a month and talk about how it went. That can be a really good way to do it. Another excellent way, either in addition to that or in place of that, is to have one friend, to have what's called a chevruta, a partner with whom to do this. So you kind of keep each other on track. You check in with each other. So it can be really nice to do it with at least one other person. So what you would want to do is you'd want to pick whatever character trait you're going to work on for the month, study it from a book, and then kind of think about how you want to keep it in your mind. That's hard to do. All of us, our minds are going a million directions. We have so much going on in our life. So an important part of this practice is being okay with the fact that sometimes you're going to forget to work on it. You bring yourself back to it. That's expected. But you're going to try to do some things to help you remember. For example, you'll pick a focus phrase, something that's just easy to remember. You could put it on your refrigerator. You could put it on your mirror. You could put it on your computer, somewhere where you'll see it from time to time. You might choose to every morning remind yourself of what you're working on. If I'm working on patience, maybe in the morning I'm going to remind myself, okay, it's going to be interesting today to see how I do. And then maybe you'll decide that it's during the 15 minutes that you drive to work, that's going to be your time to really kind of try and focus in on patience. Or maybe you have young kids at home and getting them ready for school in the morning is challenging. So maybe that's the time to kind of focus in on patience. It's not like you're trying to focus in all day long. That's like too much. But just to find a time that you can kind of focus in. And then some people at the end of the day will think back, how did I do on that trait today? There's some other things that people do. One is to keep a journal. Some people will do that. And some people will pick an action item. So for example, if I'm working on patience, maybe I'm going to make sure that anytime I feel myself getting impatient, I take 3 deep breaths before I do anything else. And that's going to be my way to kind of help myself reset. So these are just ways to just kind of try to fine tune a little bit who we are and think about how we can do a little bit better. So I'm going to stop. I just want to ask, is this clear? Questions? And then we're going to jump in with one and see one. Anybody have any questions or thoughts?
So, Rabbi Steele, I was just wondering if, because I noticed in Alan Marinus' book, there's an institute. So is there like workshops that people can actually go to, 3 or 4 days to kind of get started? And then they, kind of are on their, can form their groups in their community or their partnerships in their community?
Yeah, there definitely are. There's retreats, there's online teaching that you can take. Lots of different ways to study Mussar. Certainly, some of the synagogues around town have their own programs. So that's another way to. Sorry, I was just seeing a note from Azra. But yeah. So those, yes, definitely are. Carrie, do you have?
Yeah, hi. I was so excited to see this topic. Alan Marinus is going to be spending an entire Shabbat with Temple Emmanuel in February, talking about exactly what you're talking about, and Mussar is tradition and all this stuff. So yeah, it's alive and well in community.
So that's a fantastic opportunity if anybody wants to take it, can take advantage of that to go hear Alan Marinus. He's certainly not the only teacher, but he's excellent, really excellent. So yeah, so I assume that program will be open to the community, and that would be great. That's something people could look online, I bet, and get more information about, or call Temple Emmanuel in Tempe. So that's fantastic. Thank you for mentioning that. So, okay, yeah, great. That's wonderful. Good to know. All right, anything else before I jump in with an example? All right. Okay, here we go, friends. This is from a book by Rabbi David Jaffe. It was a Midot curriculum that was created. I picked it because it's a pretty short writing. I thought we could do it pretty easily, but in the book, Everyday Holiness, it's maybe 8 or 10 pages on a topic. So it's a little deeper. which is nice. And you can, again, you can read it with a friend or whatever to get the depth of learning. So I mentioned that one of the things I like about Mussar study is that you're learning about these character traits from a little different perspective than we might have on our own. And that can help us, I think. I think our wisdom traditions have a lot to teach us. So here is one that's an example where I think it is kind of different from the way that we normally think of the word. So the word here in Hebrew is anava, and the character trait in English is usually translated humility. Humility. So I think probably what's easiest is if I read, and happy to stop and discuss anywhere along the way. This is just a page and a half. It's not very long. Okay, so he asks this question: what image comes to mind when you think of a humble person? I imagine an unassuming, quiet person who holds himself back and doesn't take up a lot of space. A humble person could never be a leader of a company or an organization or a movement. In the English language, humility is synonymous with the word meek. However, a Jewish understanding of humility is more complex. The Torah calls Moses the most humble person on the earth. Right away, this tips us off that humility cannot just imply taking a back seat and letting others lead. Moses confronted Pharaoh, led the Israelites out of slavery, and challenged both God and the people at moments of crisis in the desert. A Jewish definition of humility is something akin to healthy self-esteem. All midot, we talked about this, all midot exist along a continuum. For example, apathy and uncontrollable rage are the extremes of a continuum where patience and appropriate anger sit in the middle. Similarly, true humility occupies a middle space between self-deprecation on the one hand and arrogance on the other. So I just want to stop there for a minute to say gives us already something to think about, right? If we imagine that continuum, we can think about ourselves. Do I find myself leaning towards being maybe too arrogant? Am I too self-deprecating? And it can, again, vary in different circumstances, right? Maybe depending on how comfortable we are in different circumstances. So thinking about that and thinking about that desire to find a place where we have that esteem of ourselves and we don't need to be either arrogant or overly self-deprecatory. So here's what Rabbi Jaffe says. Before I learned this Jewish perspective, I had thought of myself as a humble person because I didn't think much of myself. I remember being so surprised when a good friend said she thought I was arrogant. How could I be arrogant, I wondered, when I felt so unworthy and low? Indeed, it is just this lack of self-worth that fuels arrogant behavior. During this same era of my life, I moved to Boston to work for a non-profit organization. Someone held the department director level job I wanted at this organization, so I took a more junior position. I felt bad about being in what seemed to me a position beneath my level of education and experience. On one of my first days on this job, I asked this department director how long she thought she would be staying in her current position because I thought her position was perfect for me. Only later did she tell me how arrogant a question this was to ask. This question was clearly fueled by how negative I felt about where I was on my career path. What would true humility have looked like in this situation? It would have meant knowing that I had the ability to shine in whatever job I held, and also that I would trust myself and God, that I had something meaningful to offer exactly where I was at that moment in my career, and that I would ultimately get where I needed to go. So maybe I'll just stop here for a minute. Thoughts about this so far? You find it interesting? Just wondering, anybody have anything they want to jump in with as you're hearing it? If not, I can keep going. All right. Didn't know how much you want to keep. Go ahead, Judy.
I think it's hard to know what arrogance is because it requires you to see yourself from the outside, which most of us have a little bit of trouble with.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is subjective. I mean, it is, right? I mean, with any quality, you're trying to kind of gauge yourself. And, maybe if you have a good friend who's really honest, maybe. But also, I do think that that's a benefit of studying it in a group. Often, I think from hearing others, you think like, oh, yeah, I kind of do that, or something like that, that can be helpful in kind of thinking about it more. But yeah, Judy, I mean, thanks for saying that. We don't have a perfect mirror, any of us, so it can be hard to know.
Hi. Backwards in the mirror.
I missed the beginning because I didn't have the link, so I probably missed a lot if you guys started at 6:30. But when I was thinking about like myself being such a quiet person, people thought I was snobby sometimes because of my quietness. And I always thought of myself as a really nice person, trying to be helpful to everybody. But because of my quietness, sometimes I came across that way, and I was like, oh, okay. So I just wanted to share that.
I so appreciate you sharing that. And I think for those of us who, I mean, I guess I feel like I am that way too often when I'm not in my professional role. Maybe this is a good trait for us because maybe it encourages us to push ourselves a little bit more out there, to speak up a little bit more. As you're going to see, it talks a little bit about that, about taking our proper place. So being willing to push ourselves a little bit. Joan?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as a therapist, I find that, I mean, this is really what the crux of therapy is being able to be that not personal person for a client and have them describe how they feel and see about themselves, and being able to ask those questions to help them take perspective so that they can be both and all whenever the situation is best for them. As where most people just think, well, I'm this way and that's how I am and I don't like it. And they want, you do something about it, like you tell me what to do about it. So it's really asking those hard questions, whether it's with a friend, a therapist, or looking in the mirror and saying, what can I do to find that balance of what I'm looking for? Not too much this, not too much that, but being able to sort of shift back and forth when the situation calls for that. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I do want to say too, I think most of us, maybe not all, but a lot of us on this call are women. And I think women have often been, I don't know, taught to be quiet and, whatever, don't cause trouble, just sit back. And so maybe for some of us, it takes a little bit more to push ourselves to be a little more active in some situations. So a therapist could be a great person to work on some of this with, for sure. All right, well, let me go back to the text, share a little bit more of it. I appreciate you all speaking up. So thank you for doing that. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Okay, here we go. Here are two examples of humility in Jewish sources. Rav Huna says, anyone who makes a set place, a makom, for his prayer, the God of Abraham helps him. When he dies, it is said about him that he was an anav, a humble person, a chassid, a pious person, and one of the students of Abraham, our ancestor. What is the relationship between making a set place for prayer and anavah? Dr. Alan Marinas writes that the main issue is about space. When we say that this seat is mine, we are also saying that the other seat is not mine. By making a set place, we are also giving space to others. I think that's an interesting idea. According to Marinus, this is the key to anava. The anav knows how much space to take up in any situation. So part of this is, a literal space in the sanctuary, for example. But part of this is also about how much space do you take up in a room, right? When our anava is out of balance, we take either too little or too much space. Think about yourself in different situations. Are you always the first one to talk in meetings or groups? Do you speak several times before some other people speak at all? You may be taking up too much space. Or are you the kind of person who hangs back and either doesn't talk at all or says one thing just before the program leader closes the discussion? You may be taking too little space. Our goal is to take the right amount of space in each situation. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. And it is a way to maybe concretize a little bit this question of, Judy said it can be hard to tell how arrogant you are, but you can think about when I'm in a meeting and there are 10 people in the room, am I talking a tenth of the time or am I talking half of the time? That kind of a thing. And we probably all know people who tend to monopolize in a situation like that. So Anava would say they probably need to back up a little bit and not take up so much space. And other people who we'd love to hear more from. And so, thinking about that, when are the times when we could maybe speak up a little bit more? Okay, so here are some questions for us to think about, each of us. What is our relationship to taking space, right? Are we comfortable? Are we not comfortable with that? In what ways does the space you take depend on the situation, right? Might very well. Okay, and then here's another beautiful teaching from the Hebrew Bible. A different perspective on anava involves our ability to show up as needed in a particular situation. When Moses calls to Abraham at the beginning of the binding of Isaac's story, or when the angel calls to Moses from the burning bush, both men respond, Hineni, here I am. An ancient commentary to the Torah says that this term Hineni implies anava, or readiness to take action. We might wonder what is humble about saying Hineni. Here I am implies being fully present. When I am fully present, I set aside what I might have thought was important for something else that is calling me from a deeper place. Abraham and Moses heard God calling. What is the equivalent call for us? As dedicated as I am to spiritual life, I've never heard a non-embodied voice call to me. I think the equivalent for me is deep intuition. For many of us, it is hard to tell the difference between intuition and the general noise that plays in our heads. But when we can make out our true inner voices, the challenges become putting our other priorities aside and declaring, here I am. To do so takes conviction and deep trust in ourselves and our spiritual lives. This inner confidence is also a representation of anava. So maybe we can talk about that for a moment. Oh, good to see everyone. Can you all think of moments where you answered Hineni, or you wish you had answered Hineni, or you grappled with that, how much to be present? I'll just say one is parenting. Sometimes it's hard to know how much to jump in, how much to back off, right? If you're a parent, you have to try to discern. Yeah, Carrie?
Yeah, I'm thinking of moments where I didn't step up because I thought I don't know, lacked the skill or lacked the experience, or it was scary. I hadn't seen somebody do it before me. And how much I regret that, right? I had applied for something, I was excited about it, and then I backed off at the idea of actually getting it. And, if I could go back to my younger self and say, do it, take the challenge. I wish I could do that.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I think for many of us, maybe to our younger self, we'd like to teach them to take a fuller space. So it's so interesting because I think of anava, when I think of humility, I think of like being a wallflower. And here we're seeing that's not the idea. It's finding your proper space. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I would also say that, and I'm a college teacher of sociology. Many of my young students, especially female, they do not do that. They do not take up space, and their tone is very quiet. Sometimes I actually have to walk toward them to hear them, and they won't share in the room. They'll come up to me afterwards, one to one, and they will share. And what they have to share is absolutely wonderful. But they're too afraid to share in a larger space. And then I would say for all of my students, if I take them out of my classroom where there's a comfort zone that they've built, and we go for guest speakers, such as a session like this, but it's in an auditorium, most of them will not say anything because, again, the comfort zone has been breached.
Yeah, you're making me think about this right now. This is Zoom. How many of us feel comfortable speaking up, right? It can be hard. So we can maybe all of us can think about how we could use this midah, right, of anava. Where could I take a little bit more space and share who I am,
Well, it really has to do, if I may, with trusting yourself and being, going back to the whole concept again of self-esteem, which we can't really put our, hands on. It's so conceptual, but and I think it really, as you were just saying about like, I think we as women have been told, and even though we may be I'm speaking for myself, very, smart and high functioning, but there's still that's the initial emotion is I'm going to be judged. What I'm going to say is not as good as, and there's so much subjective and external influence that I know you and I, Rabbi, have had a conversation when being asked to read on the beam. That's like, oh, I can't do that. I can't get up in front of people. I'll make a fool of myself is the comment in my head. And yet the argument's going on. Well, that's ridiculous, Joan. And yet it's easier. It's habitual. It's conditioned to just step back and let someone else do it who's better than I am, which of course sounds ridiculous, but that's the conditioning.
Right. We all have those things. So this would be an opportunity for studying anava to take some time to think about what are those places where we want to step up a little more. I was just thinking about, and this probably doesn't apply to those of us, at least who I can see on the screen so much, but Michelle, talking about younger people, of course, they naturally maybe don't have as much self-confidence yet, but also just how much social media must make that more difficult. That when the only dancers you see are perfect dancers, and just kind of the perfection sometimes that's out there and in social media that could, I imagine, make it even more difficult today for people to just develop confidence in just being themselves. So that's hard. All right, well, I want to share with you. So let's say you were going to take this midah and you wanted to work on it. This particular version of this curriculum had this, which was kind of nice. This is not in the book, Everyday Holiness, but you could do this for yourself. You could create a little chart if you wanted, if you're a chart person, for example. And you could, put dates up here and check off for yourself when you do these different activities connected with this midah. So our midah is humility, and here are a number of things one can do with humility. First, we did Torah learning. We did that check, that's done. We've done it. We could go back and look at it, but that's done. Now they're giving us 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways to spend some time thinking about this midah of anava, of humility. We don't have to do them all. We could pick one. We could pick something completely different. But this is the kind of thing that makes it kind of a practice. So one thing that they suggest doing that I already mentioned is to pick a focus phrase. It could be something you just come up with. It could be something from the reading that's meaningful to you. So here are 2 options, for example, that we just heard about. One is no more than my space, no less than my place, right? Not to be too out there, taking up all the space, not to be a wallflower either. Figuring out what's right. That could be a good focus phrase to say once a day or whatever to yourself, or see on your refrigerator. Or hineni, here I am. Here I am. I'm gonna be present. I'm gonna step up. And I'll give you an example. For me, sometimes I get asked to speak about a bill, like to a state legislature. That is something I do not feel very comfortable with. I've done it a few times. It's a place where I think I could use saying hineni a little bit more, being willing to do it. It's hard for me, but that would be an example of, taking up a little more space where maybe I could try to do that, or calling my Congress people. I mean, that's something where I think, just given my particular position, it would be a good thing for me to do. So again, just thinking about a focus phrase that you might like, that might help you through the 2 weeks or the month that you're going to be working on this midah. Then another thing you can do is a practice, a Kabbalah, a practice, taking on a practice. For example, choose one time each day to notice how much space you're taking up, right? Could be when you're teaching, could be when you're in the evening, with a loved one. Figuring out, just making a set time so that you're actually working on it. Or choose a meeting or time of day that you will take up more or less space than is comfortable for you. That could be interesting to play with. Okay, and here's another practice. Say hineni and step up at least once a day, right? Who's someone I could help? Hineni, here I am. Maybe I'm going to open a door for someone. Hineni, here I am. I'm going to do something. Okay. All right, so those were 2 practices. Here's another one, Cheshbon HaNefesh, a journal. Just a journal. Hitbodedut means self-reflection. So, Judy asked, well, how does one, or she didn't ask, but she talked about how do we, we may not know how arrogant or not we are, but maybe a journal is a way to think about it. Maybe there's some questions I want to consider. Maybe I want to think once a day, were there some times I was arrogant that I want to try to work on? That could be a question for my journal if I'm working on this. So here are some questions for journaling. What impacts your ability to say hineni? That's a good question. What impacts the amount of space you take? And some of these questions one could journal about every day, once a week, however you want. And then the last one is talking with a friend. I think this one's particularly helpful. It's so easy. I know I already said this, but you might think I'm going to work on this every day. And then, boy, before you know it, 3 days have gone by, 5 days have gone by. You haven't done it. But if you know that once a week or once every other week, you've got a call with a friend or a Zoom or a lunch or coffee, and you're going to be talking about it, then I think it's really helpful. You have that, it kind of helps keep you on track when you know that you've got someone you're checking in with. So that can be a good way to keep doing this. I think given the time, I'm just going to tell you about another one that I'm not going to share it with you, but I'll tell you, and then I'd love to know any last thoughts. But so this one's anava, humility, and another one that I really like the Jewish perspective on is patience. And the Hebrew word for it is savlan, savlanut. And to be a savlan is to be someone who can bear a burden. So it actually means more forbearance. And I think that's really helpful, that to have patience actually does take a lot of energy. And it can be helpful if we can remember we are bearing a burden in doing that. I'll just fess up right here. I have adult children. There are times I would like them to do things they're not doing. I can see some recognition in this group. I need to have savlanut. It's theirs. There's only so much I can do, probably less I should do. So, and for me, that really does feel a bit like bearing a burden. I just have to kind of keep some things to myself. That's just what I think is appropriate. But it takes a little work. It takes a little energy to do that. So there's a place where I think I have to have, where Judaism helps me, that character trait, savlanut, patience. I can bear this, and I am going to bear this. So those were 2 character traits I wanted to share with you. Patience and humility. Love to hear any thoughts, answer any questions, anything I can do to be helpful.
Well, there are some things that are beyond our control, and especially dealing with your adult children is one of those.
So true.
I understand.
When I was in Topeka, a really beloved psychoanalyst who was just the dearest man, he said about adult children, you can pay and you can play, but you cannot say. I try to remind myself of that.
So true.
So yeah, thank you, Peggy. Yeah. So I don't know, I don't know if this is helpful. I don't know if people have questions. Yeah, Penelope, you have to unmute.
I'm sorry I was late. I'm sorry I missed it, but I also couldn't find the link. So I just came in when you were talking about humility, and I've really been sitting here thinking about the difference between being humble and humility. I think those have sort of a different connotation in my understanding, but humility seems to have a more positive note to it than humble does, because it does feel meek. So that's been helpful. Yeah. And I have over the years been a trainer for something called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. And since I am one of those people who by nature fills up way too much space, I just have to sit on my hands and tape my mouth and know that sometimes I just have to be quiet and give other people a chance to process and speak. So that this is a reminder of that is part of the humility for me, is keeping my mouth shut.
It's hard when you're a trainer or like leading this sometimes to know how much to speak, how much not to.
Right.
But it sounds like you're aware of it. Yeah. So I do want to recommend this book, Everyday Holiness. I think it just has so many wonderful, like, aha little insights. Anybody who wants it, really, even without doing this program so formally, you could decide, I'm going to do 1 chapter a month. I'm going to do it. I'm going to read it. And then I'm just going to take some time to think about it. And then I'll go on to the next chapter. That's kind of the idea, just kind of delve into one at a time. Give yourself time to kind of, explore it.
So, Rabbi Steele, are there times if, say you were helping to moderate a group of that's working on the chapters, are there times when, someone gets stuck on, and I will confess, I have no patience, 0. My husband would attest to that. But like, leave it alone, come back to it. Like, you've worked on it. Maybe you need to have a rest from it, work on something else, and then come back to it.
Yeah.
Is that something you would recommend?
Yeah, I think that's wise because it's going to continue to percolate. But the idea, when I guess maybe I didn't quite say this, when you do it in a group, the nice thing is to come back and everybody shares for maybe 2 minutes how it went. And, so you get some cross-fertilization and, if you're feeling stuck, maybe somebody has an idea that's helpful. Can be nice. But yeah, we're all imperfect beings. We're not going to do any of this perfectly. It's just to kind of try to move the needle a little bit and just, again, I love this. Some of you maybe missed this. One of the teachings of the Mussar program is that life is a curriculum. So that idea, we all keep, pushing up against those things that we need to work on, right? So, yeah.
Well, and as you said, and with what Penelope revealed, having the awareness on what it is you really do need to work on, I think is a first step in it. So, it's when you're in denial that, oh, well, I don't need to give anybody else any more space. Then I'm not sure what we would do.
Don't invite them back.
Penelope, everybody on this call, I think, has been teaching or training. So we're all in the same position of understanding that there has to be a silence and attention for the creativity of others to come out. And maybe that's part of our problem, that we're all deferring to each other.
Just real quickly, another really nice teaching of this program that I didn't mention is what's called a Bahira point, which means a choice moment, which can be something to look for. It's that moment when you're going to make a decision one way or another, and to become aware when you're at that place. So, for example, if there's something that's going to make us angry and we want to be patient, what are the things that can help us be patient? So, for example, we might say, well, when I get too rushed, then I'm going to get angry or I'm going to get impatient. So the Bahira point, the choice point is, let me make a good decision about how much time I'm giving myself to get to the party or whatever. So I don't get in that situation of being frantic or whatever, right? So looking for those choice points where we can make a good decision. I think that's another wise teaching. Yeah, Judy.
Another thing, and I know I've been speaking a lot, so I'm conscious of my space, but it seems to me that we have to be forgiving of ourselves, and instead of saying, oh, I'm not good at this, to say, tomorrow the sun will rise again and I can try again and see how it goes today, or tomorrow.
I did mention that at the beginning, and it's great to mention it again, that one could get too critical of oneself with this program, and you really have to be careful about that. Just to be really, loving to oneself, humble, and we're just all on this path, and sometimes we go the direction we want to go, and sometimes we don't. And like Judy just said, maybe we'll make a better decision tomorrow. Just, we're humans. So it's really important to remember. Think of all the people who aren't even trying.
Well, I think that sometimes when you're in a situation that could go either way is sometimes when you hang back for a few seconds or 30 seconds or so before you make that decision, it helps to get to that end decision, whichever decision it is, not to rush into it and make the wrong decision.
It seems to me, Peggy, one of the things you've just shown is how one midah can affect other midot. So like just bringing patience can help with all these others. I really love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Well, I wanted to thank you for sharing this. I'm also in a group with the Daughters of Abraham, and I want to suggest, when it's the Jewish turn, to see if they know this, and we could maybe, because it's basically a book club, and to see if anybody would be interested in reading this book, because it sounds very interesting.
Is that the group with Helene Weizenkorn?
Yes.
Yeah, she's very aware of this and has taught it, and I'm sure she'd be thrilled. So feel free to mention it.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Rabbi Steele. This was really illuminating. And I did put the Amazon link, not that I'm an Amazon champion, but it just was handy so that you can look. But there were other resources as well for purchasing the book if you are all interested. And then I'm putting in the chat also our link to where we have the listing of the upcoming ILM circles through the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona, because we have a variety of these things, different topics once a month. So we'd love to have you come back and join us again. And I appreciate all of you taking out time from your very busy schedules to join us tonight. It's been a lovely evening, very engaging. And I especially thank Rabbi Steele for making this such an engaging and thought-provoking session. I would be remiss, of course, if I didn't thank Joe, who produces the behind-the-scenes portion of the ILM circles, and then, of course, Asra Hussein, who couldn't join us tonight, but she's always here in spirit. So hope you all have a wonderful December, and I will wish you really good thoughts for the new year. So thank you again.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.